a distinct privilege to welcome Desh Deshpande. He is the chairman of the Sparta Group. But that's an understatement. Desh is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. He is one of the first Indian Americans to have taken two huge companies public, Cascade Communications and Sycamore Networks. He's also the chairman of the recently phenomenal company A1. Desh, truly a pleasure to welcome you.
Thank you.
There are so many lessons to be learned from you, Desh. Entrepreneurs everywhere look up to you, not only for lessons but for admiration. That how does Desh, in the face of such insurmountable successes, express such utter humility? That's a lesson we want to learn, but we'll talk about towards the end, I think. Okay. We'll start asking you the challenges for entrepreneurs, regardless of whether you are a late stage, early stage, are similar, but it depends on what stage you are at. So if I were to ask you a two-pronged question, one is if you take the example of bigger companies and the challenge that they face in today's scenario versus entrepreneurs who are starting out and their challenges.
Right. So, I think the business is always challenging. And it's particularly challenging right now because of this global economy. I think things are shifting dramatically, and in a lot of ways, the global companies now are competing with countries as opposed to companies. When China and Korea have such aggressive strategies of dominating industries, it's a new game, and you have to be that much more innovative and that much more creative in terms of bringing value that they cannot bring to the marketplace, which becomes challenging. So I think business in some ways has always been challenging, but also the number of opportunities is huge. I think the world is going to change dramatically over the next 20 years. And as you know, every change is led by an entrepreneur. So there's going to be no lack of entrepreneurial opportunities. But it's a tough game, but it's always been a tough game.
I want to throw in a policy question here, since you are on the advisory council of the president of the US. Governments always try to take our initiatives and make policy. They struggle very hard, but they never gel with the right audience, which is the entrepreneurs. There's no proper connectivity, and there's always complaint from entrepreneurs that the policy is always wrong for us. And on the other side, government tries to do that. Now that they're roping in smart people like you, I'm trying to understand, if you would like to share with us, are there any new strategies that should come out that will really help the American entrepreneurial system?
Well, one of the biggest things that I think I've personally been working on is just the new ideas. I think U.S. has always been very good in innovation and entrepreneurship, but it used to be a thing that's nice to have. But in the new economy, we have to learn to do it a lot better. Not just to be nice, but just as a survival thing. Because the standard of living is so high in the US, unless you can base the economy on innovation, it's going to be very hard to sustain the lifestyle here. And one of the places where new ideas get generated is squarely universities. In 80s and 70s, when we did our companies, a lot of our ideas came from Bell Labs and IBM and so on. But that isn't going to happen anymore, in the sense a lot of these companies cannot afford to do basic research. Bell Labs could do basic research because AT&T was a monopoly. So the responsibility of idea generation has squarely moved back to universities. And one of the things that I've been working on for the last 10 years at MIT, through the Desh Deshpande Center for Technological Innovation, is to really see if there's a way we can make these innovations have a bigger impact, either societal impact or economic impact. If you can, and in the last 10 years we've shown that clearly you can, by connecting the innovation a little bit more directly to relevance. So sort of the formula that we have worked on is that innovation plus relevance is equal to impact. That is, innovators in universities have to come up with great ideas, and then the entrepreneurs have to take those great ideas and make companies out of those. And US spends about $150 billion a year. So the US taxpayers spend $150 billion a year. It's a lot of money. And so if there is a way we can get a lot more out of that $150 billion, I think we can really get this thing turbocharged. And I'm seeing a lot of very positive moves in the government. For example, the Department of Energy. You know, the Department of Energy set up a fund, and there's a gentleman by the name Arun Mujumdar who actually runs that group. And he absolutely believes in this model. So he's so committed to actually funding all the new initiatives and making sure that they are directly connected to venture capitalists and entrepreneurs and so on, that I think we're going to see some good companies come out of that effort.
When you look at the education model, we always are trying to compare ourselves, or catch up to rather, it's very ironical, to Indians and the Chinese. They have become the new boogeymen for American kids. You know, study otherwise the Indians are coming. The K2 high school is where I think really lagging behind. But the universities are still phenomenal. It's out of this world. How do you, this is a sort of a dichotomy if you look at it. How can it be that you know, basic education at the school level is, you know, so far behind compared to the developing in the developed world, but the universities are still doing so well?
Well, you know, I think it's the best thing that US has going is the freedom of thought. You know, people are very creative, they really understand things, and they're not forced to memorize things and just spit out the answers, right? But I think US is doing pretty good. You know, in some ways, it's funny now when I hear about this gloom and doom about how it's so much better in Shanghai and Bangalore, as opposed to whether Detroit, Cleveland, or Boston or California. I think US is actually doing pretty good. And we just need to feel proud about the fact that what we're doing is good and build on it, as opposed to sort of suddenly get into this gloom and doom of, it's true that entrepreneurship and innovation existed only in US, and there was nothing there. All those guys are now coming up, and they're also becoming a part of the global economy. But that doesn't mean that the opportunities are going away here. I think there is a lot of opportunities. People have the education, we have good infrastructure, we have good entrepreneurial ecosystem, we have venture capital, we have everything here. And so I think it's more, people need to start feeling good about themselves more than anything else, I think.
I want to take the reverse spin now, since you are also an Indian American entrepreneur. You went to prestigious IIT. How do you think Indians are suddenly doing so well? Or is it, you know, just the IITs and the top, and a few schools of the country?
No, actually, you know, entrepreneurship in India is alive and well everywhere, at all fronts. In fact, I'm even more excited about entrepreneurship in India at the very basic level. You know, the kind of problems that India needs to solve. You know, we have 500 million people who cannot read and write. So the way you solve those problems has to be very different than the traditional ways that you solve problems. And anytime there's a new way to solve problems, you need entrepreneurship. And I think so far India, in the sort of the entrepreneurship 101, they have mostly participated in using their skills and talents to solve the problems of some other countries, some other companies. You know, all the greatest companies that you hear about, Infosys and Wipro and all these companies. In some ways, it's tremendous what they've done. It's tremendous value they've created. But most of that effort is to make some other companies better in some other countries, or some other countries better. The next generation of companies, I think, are the companies that are really using the technology and the management skills and else to solve the problems right there in India. These are companies, these are non-profits, these are non-government organizations. You know, one of the organizations that I'm involved with, Akshay Patra, you know, they built a kitchen in Hubli, where we're doing most of our work. They do 185,000 meals a day, 12 cents a meal. They use the best supply chain, best procurement, best engineering, ISO 9001. So you suddenly have the best practices in the world being applied to the kind of problems that exist there. So India has two issues. One is huge numbers. Everything has to be in big numbers, very low affordability. And that's the necessity that creates that mother of invention. Not that these things did not exist, let's say, when I left India in '73. But in addition to these necessities, what India has today is, number one, the confidence. The young people there are very, very confident. They have access to technology. they have access to management skills, and then they have access to capital. And because they've already done these bigger companies and so on, they're not scared of scale and numbers. So I think it's very exciting to see how we can apply all these modern things to actually alleviate poverty or create opportunities for these billions of people. And so this particular organization now, in the last 5-6 years since they started scaling, they're at 1.3 million meals a day. You know, it's 12 cents a meal, $30 to feed a kid for the whole year. And so, and there's several organizations like this in India. And I think this new entrepreneurial strength is a real hope for the world. Not only just the struggling parts of the world, whether it's Africa or South America, but even in US. Even in US, you know, the globalization, I think, the top 5% of the population is going to do extraordinarily well. But the bottom 20-30% of the population still has to figure out what role they're going to play in the global economy. And I think coming up with new ways to look at their problems and come up with solutions and scale them, I think it's something that India is going to be known for the next 10 years.